in this forum.
Yeah.
So
Thanks.
let's get started. Yeah,
Yep.
thank you. Thanks for those insights. So this session is all about GenAI SDLC. So not only we are going to cover SDLC, we are going to walk through some examples as well during this session. I mean, this is we are conducting this session based on some of the feedback that we received because most of the people have not done the SDLC, but they want to completely understand the entire SDLC. And some are doing mostly on the development side using GitHub Copilots or Cursor or any other tool that they have. But people did not had the visibility from end to end what is GenAI SDLC is. So that is the reason this session is. So what is this new SDLC? So if you compare between with traditional SDLC, right? So traditional SDLC is deterministic outputs. When you write a logic, you are expecting certain output, and that's what you will code for. But GenAI SDLC is not like that. So right, so it's not deterministic outputs. So the same prompt if you give to ChatGPT or Gemini, will give you different answers. Even the core philosophy behind the answer may be same, but the answer it's going to give is different. It's not going to be exactly the same. So that is a big difference between traditional SDLC and GenAI SDLC. And we all know that we used to use rule-based logic, right? If then else or case statements, those kind of things, or loops, something like that we used to use in traditional SDLC. But that's not the case in GenAI. So it's all mostly going to be prompt-based. All exploratory requirements, and you are trying to give different types of prompts to understand the output that it is going to give because you are expecting certain output. So until you get the output, you will tweak your prompts. In traditional SDLC, you clearly require clear upfront requirements. So this is where we used to spend a lot of time earlier because once you start the coding, there's no going back. Because if something has to be changed in between, right, it's going to cost a lot of money and time. So that is the reason upfront requirements were used to be emphasized a lot earlier. But nowadays, so the with the kind of flexibility that we have with these tools, right? So exploratory requirements is becoming common. So even though there is a core understanding of what this application is all about, how it should look like, right? Once you develop some application, if some of the elements are not appearing properly, you can always go and change it on the fly, and you can do those changes within an hour or so. So that's how flexible this requirements gathering is becoming. Okay, and traditional SDLC is always focused on the code. We used to spend at least 60-70% of the time on the code itself, optimizing, doing the code reviews, doing very exhaustive testing, and all that stuff. But in SDLC, it's all about data and prompts. So there's no discussion about the code as such. Of course, today the code that is generated is maybe 50-60%, but still it has a lot of issues and everything. Developers has to spend quite a bit of time still on the coding, but the focus is going to shift away from the coding in the months to come because as these models are getting intelligent every month or so, so the focus on the coding is going to go away. So this is just on the high level SDLC. So coming to the first step, right? So exploration prototype. This is nothing but the business requirement, right? So people have ideas, they want to prototype right away. So earlier we used to take weeks at least to do that kind of a idea capturing through business requirement BRD documents, right? So that itself used to take a lot of time. Now the business users or the product manager himself can open a tool and try to figure out what is the best path forward. In the sense, how his application should look like. You can use any low code no code tools, Lovable or any other thing, right? And try to come up with kind of a prototype himself. So once that is finalized, then he's going to the developers to develop a production grade application. So that's what is happening in the first stage. So most of the people are trying to use the open source foundational models, right? Llama Meta is famous. Mistral AI, this is from French company. And Hugging Face, everybody knows. So we all use DeepSeek and all those models using Hugging Face, OpenAI router. and prompt engineering anyway. So this is bread and butter and UI IDE, right? So earlier we used to have different types of UI, but now cursor, VS Code in itself is becoming a UI for us because you give a prompt, it's able to generate the UI code for you. So from the last couple of days, so I'm just experimenting some of the use cases that the client has shared. So I'm just want to share those things. Okay. So you are able to see my screen, right? The other screen.
Yes, Srini. Yes.
So I'm showing a light simulator. You're able to see, right?
Yes, Srini.
Yes, Rin.
Okay. So this is one of the requirements that we got from another client saying that given a room, right, room dimensions, can you show me the simulation, 3D simulation, okay, of the room? So the model should suggest what kind of lighting that room would require. Okay. So then I just put together what this interface should have. So anyway, API key is there. Then I gave the different option of models, what models we should use. Okay. And scenario. So scenario would described by the person. A modern office room with a desk lamp, overhead fluorescent lights, natural sunlight coming through the window. The room has white walls and wooden desks. So when I click generate lighting, it should generate the 3D window. So this is not yet there, but I'm just trying to show the prototype asset. Room parameters or room dimensions also the person can give. So wall material, what is the painted walls? Is it painted wall type, right? Wall material, what is it painted wall or brick or wooden panel or concrete? This kind of an option he can give. Even the wall color, he can say what kind of wall color he requires. And if he wants to add lights, right, he can also add lights. If you want to test that scene by adding a light, he can do that. Okay. And force canvas, if you want to refresh the canvas, you can do. And the scene information, it will come. A debugging console also, right? As it goes through the code, it will show you the what's happening behind the scenes. Okay. So all these things we showed it to him, and he liked this interface, but he wanted some other changes done. Okay. This I developed within an hour or so. Okay. Then this is the second interface that we showed to him. You're able to see the second interface, right?
Yes, Srini. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So he wants to move some of the boxes from everything instead of on the left hand side, right? He wants to show some of the boxes on the right side. So that is the reason we moved light analysis, light controls, debug console, everything to the right side. So this we are able to do this in maybe 20-30 minutes. Okay. So I mean, he's trying to display something. The objective is not to make this 3D everything working, but we just wanted to show him how the interface look like. So if he wants to have just a conference room, he wants to test it, he can do that. Then add light, he can add the light and test debug window, can test it. Then room settings, which is change the interface, right? Instead of drop down boxes, we change this interface, wall color, everything. Okay. Then he requested how does the very simple interface would look like. Okay, so this is another interface. Hope you are able to see the third interface.
Yes,
So this is
Srini.
the simplest of all the interfaces. Okay. So here at least we are able to show him some 3D window. Okay. It's able to show the lights and everything. So room analysis. So when I click smart lighting recommendation, right? So these are the recommendation setting it's showing. Total light set, ceiling fixtures, wallpapers. Why this setting? It's also giving justification. And expected results, uniformity, good shadow control, etc. Apply recommendation lighting. So once it says, right, then when it says apply recommendation lighting, then I should be able to see that. So I'm just trying to create that once again, smart lighting recommendation. Then I say apply recommendation lighting. So it's changing. So all these things, this is took another 1 hour or so for us to create this simulation. So, I mean, imagine if we have done in a traditional way before LLM days, it would have taken, I don't know how many days, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, I'm not sure. But all these things we are able to do within one day after the client gave us the requirement. So this is kind of a power of kind of a what I can say, the exploratory data requirements kind of an analysis. Uh, so as he saw these things, he got more ideas and we started incorporating those things. So it's went into an exploratory way of doing the business requirements. So we thought was very fun and interactive as well. Okay, I am going back to my PPT. Hope everybody is able to see the PPT.
Yes, Srini.
Okay. Yeah, so the phase two, everybody knows, right? The phase two is all about development and implementation. So this is where we have shown some of the use cases earlier on the RAG architecture or LLM fine tuning, right? So again, this development, at least the MVP, what we call is that minimum viable product. So you are able to do in 2 3 days, at least the small MVPs. So the orchestration workflow, LangChain, LlamaIndex, these are all the famous thing. Uh, whoever is developing these applications, right? Most of you are using these orchestration frameworks. So if I have to just show some more frameworks, right? So LangChain, LlamaIndex, famous for RAG applications. Then Haystack, okay, DeepSet. This is again based out of Germany, I guess. So DeepSet is another organization. Then guidance is from Microsoft. So this is also becoming popular because if an organization is set on Microsoft, right, they try to use all Microsoft tools. So those kind of an organizations are trying to use guidance kind of a tool. Then Flowify is another open source tool. So these are kind of a LLM orchestration framework, right, where it glues all the components together. And vector databases now for all the memory and for RAG kind of applications. So you're using vector databases. And for some of the use cases, people are also using graph databases. And of course, so even though some of the development for microorganizations is happening purely using low code, no code tools, Huawei, Zeniten, etc. Okay. And these are the agent oriented frameworks. If you are doing the agent, right, QA is the most popular one that everybody is using. And from AutoGen is from Microsoft. OpenAI Swarm is another one. Then Parley is from Meta is another one. But QA is what we are also doing a lot of experiments. Okay. So this is for the agent oriented frameworks. So coming to testing and development, I think we discussed a lot, especially on this frameworks, right? Guardrails, Discord. NVIDIA has their own framework also, Nemo. Looks like these are also becoming popular. But from the open source side, Guardrails, Discord are the most famous ones. Okay. See, most of the time, see, the focus is shifting away from the code we are saying, right? So most of the people are now going to spend a lot of time on the testing evaluation. So people has to be very, very familiar with these evaluation frameworks or testing frameworks. So LLM observability. So that's where the discussion happened, right? So Open LLMmetry is one of the tools that the people are using. Then LangFuse is another one. Okay. So this is where I just want to show these dashboards, right? So where we are saying that observability needs to be monitored. So you'll be able to monitor traces in the sense how the communication is happening between LLM as well as your front-end application. So how many calls it is making. Here it is shown you by data set or by a QA function as well, right? So you can see however you want to see the communication that is happening, how many calls have been made, and what is the model cost that incurred so far, right, on a given day or a month or a week. And the score. So how good is your LLM in terms of language detector, hallucinations, right? Context relevance. So all those scores you can watch it here in this dashboard. So you can see what is the average score that it's got on a scale of 0 to 1, right? So all these metrics you will be able to see and understand and control your costs. And if it is making too many calls, certain application making too many calls to LLM, then maybe you have to talk to them and see why they are making so many calls and all that stuff. And trace by time also, so particular day or a particular week or a particular month or particular hour, right? How many calls have been happening to particular LLM? All those things you can track. How the model is being used, right? What is the overall cost? So all those things you'll be able to monitor using this kind of a dashboard or observability tools. Okay. So another important thing that we need to understand when you're developing the application is when we need to bring the human in the loop, right? So here is one example or couple of examples, right? So if you are trying to diagnose, so this is an example of radiology, right? So you have an once you fed in whatever the requirement, whatever the data that you need to input, right? So once that is done, then it's giving some kind of a LLM is giving the output. So what is the disease as such, and what is the confidence it has? 78% confidence it is saying, right? So did it look at the similar past cases? Then he's saying four cases it looked earlier. So is it a high risk case? It's saying yes. Then accept or reject. This is where the human has to come and say whether he is accepting the diagnostic review of the LLM. Okay. Then if he has something else to tell, then submit feedback is another option where a user can, or the user or the doctor, whoever is reviewing this report, right? He can provide his feedback and so that the LLM can improve or give more details, anything that you want to do using the whatever the submitted feedback is, right? But here the objective is how this human in the loop would come into the picture. So this is one of the screenshots. The same way also human in the loop for credit risk assessment, right? So for a given applicant profile, so it's giving certain score, credit score. Okay. 57 it is saying. So then debt to income ratio. So some of the metrics it looked into, right? So that's what it is trying to highlight. Okay. So it's also giving some kind of an explanation. Debt to income ratio it feels is high. Then delinquencies, delinquencies in the past year, etc., etc. So then again here also the approve, review or deny kind of an option is given to a human. Since these are all sensitive topics, right? Credit risk assessment as well as your health review. So human in the loop is required, and this is the way that you need to design your screens to bring human in the loop. Okay. So this is all about testing and evaluation. Okay. Then the final one, I think we have been discussing on this LLM ops, right? So containerization, orchestration, those all these things are not going to go away. CI/CD, right? So all those things are going to say ML ops platforms or AI ops platforms. Those are becoming prominent when you are using LLM or machine learning models, right? MLflow is one of the most popular platforms. This is also an open source kind of a platform, but most of the organizations are trying to use that. And now popular monitoring tools. So evidently AI is another Python library that is becoming popular in the LLM world. And Grafana is another very old and tested tool, which most of the organizations will try to use. So you can use Grafana itself, but you need to modify because you can modify and customize Grafana, right? You can use that as well and bring some of the elements that you need to monitor for LLM kind of an application. But you can use evidently AI also because that's built from the ground up for LLM monitoring. Okay. And these are other LLM integrations. Then if you have workflow orchestration, right, where you need to do the data loads and all that stuff, then Airflow is one of the popular tools. Looks like Daxter is also coming into focus nowadays. Then Kubeflow is another one. Okay. So these are all kind of a pipeline orchestration for LLM integrations. Okay. And maintenance and improvement. So as we said, this is a non-deterministic kind of a thing, right? All these GenAI and LLM kind of applications. Because today it might be giving you the correct answer, but based on the data drift or model drift, right? The outputs would keep on changing. So that is the reason there are certain metrics that you need to incorporate in your dashboards, your monitoring dashboards, to make sure those metrics are in line with what you intended to it to be. So that is the reason this PEFT kind of a fine-tuning metrics, right, is going to become very important. And also you need to have this discipline of storing your old models. Okay, even ChatGPT 5 that came in right recently, there's a lot of backlash because people who loved their GPT-4, right, they did not love their GPT-5 at all because they felt that it's not so friendly. Okay, even the output that it is giving is very, very short. It's not elaborate like previous one. And they virtually asked OpenAI to bring back the GPT-4, right? So that is the reason it started appearing from it yesterday from in our UA, the GPT-4 legacy under legacy models. Okay, so it's a very important to have your older version because we don't know how we inspect of our best efforts in testing and everything, right? We don't know how it is uh, going to behave, and more importantly, how the users perceive it as. Okay, so if you have to roll back your latest version to the previous version, then you need to have this data version control for sure. Then workflow automation, Apache Airflow is still popular for this workflow automation in even in the LLM world. Okay. So having said that, so we just want to demonstrate this with an example. Okay. So building a customer service chatbot. I mean, this is the most famous application, right, which we have been discussing maybe from last 10 to 12 years. And we have experienced ourselves in any of the Amazon or the Flipkart or any of the other consumer kind of an applications, right? Using the service chatbot. So let's see how you do it traditionally and how you do it using GenAI. Okay. First, coming to requirements and design, right? The traditional method, rule-based chatbot. So a business analyst would meticulously document every possible question and answers. For example, if the user types, I want to track my order, respond with please enter your order number. So there used to be n number of if and else or case statements or loops in the initial days of chatbot development. Okay. But if you have to do the same thing with GenAI, right, you will try to find out what is your objective. So the objective is to create a chatbot that can answer customer questions about their orders. So it's as simple as that. So if you give this kind of a question to your any of the chatbot or any of the development the chatbot or the LLM that you are using, right, it would immediately start creating the code if you just give this high level objective. Okay. So the design is a flow chart of rules and coming back to traditional method, right? The design is going to be a flow chart of rules and keywords. This process is very detailed and can take weeks. We all experienced 5, 6 years ago or 10 years ago, right? How cumbersome it used to be to put all these things in Excel sheets or some kind of a flow chart, all these rules and process flow. And you used to use flow charts, Microsoft Visio or Jira or some other tool that you are familiar in using that, right? Sometimes we used to use even just Word documents or Excel sheet itself. But if you have to come to GenAI, right? So you will just start using the RAG augmentation, right? And point your this application to your backend in the sense connecting to your databases where you have the order related information. So here the design focuses on the data and the user experience using the RAG pipeline. So this pipeline we all know, right? It's connected to the large language model, the company's internal data also, order information, shipping status, etc. So that it can retrieve that information based on the user question and display that information. So Figma is one of the popular tools for you to do the UA. So the next step, the development, right? Then the software engineer will write the code that implement the specific rules and simple keyword matching algorithm. Okay. So again, the code is going to be deterministic for a given output. The output is always the same. If the user asks, where is my package? System only has a rule for track my order, the chatbot won't understand. Okay, so this is another thing, right? So you have to ask the exact question. So even the intent is same, but if you ask, uh, where is my package instead of track my order, then it will not be able to reply, because that if in the if else logic, that kind of a question is not there. And of course, you will use the programming languages Python or Java for this. But if you have to do this in GenAI, right, then you have LangChain as your orchestration framework. Then you use the prompt engineering. You just give a prompt to LLM saying that you are a friendly customer service agent. When asked about an order, you must retrieve the data from the API before answering. Okay. I think retrieve the data using API before answering. That's what I think the sentence should be. So that's all it is. So there's no need to write reams and reams of code using Java or Python. Then you'll use LangChain for orchestration, then vector databases like Chrome DB, right? Then you have just one API that can call uh, or connect to the order systems to get the relevant information. Then testing evaluation. I mean, we all know, right? As many as developers, there's used to be equal number of QA engineers who used to write all kind of test cases. It used to be very laborious and very lengthy process. It used to be. So the testing, then that person used to test everything, then he used to document pass and fail, why it failed, how did he traverse the workflow, because the developer has to understand the flow that the tester used, right? So all those things we used to document and used to send it to the developer. Okay, then you used to write manual testing scripts using Python or Java or SQL, right? Then perhaps you used to use Selenium to automate some of those things. But at the end of the day, you used to do or lift most of the heavy burden, right? So that's how it used to be. So, but with GenAI, there's evaluation models itself, right? Testing frameworks. So those you can use and find out. So here the shift is not apart from the accuracy, right? Is the tone is friendly or is it hallucinating? Is it not giving the correct answer? Or is it answering right to the question that the user is asking? Is it not answering something else? So those are the things that you need to test it. So the testing landscape completely changes with this kind of a different kind of testing that we need to use. And there is also human in the loop. Ultimately, the business users needs to do the testing to understand the answers that is giving is accurate or not. Right. Then the tools that you are going to use is deep eval, LangFuse kind of a framework or Giscard. Uh, those kind of frameworks that we discussed earlier, ragas, right? But the shift in terms of testing and evaluation is humongous. Okay, in GenAI world. Yeah, then the coming to the deployment and maintenance, right? So the chatbot is deployed when new queries arise and developer has to manually add those new rules and keywords to the code, which again requires a new development cycle. So whenever the new things comes up, we used to say in phase two, phase three, etc., etc. And that phase two, phase three used to take at least 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months. Okay. Yeah, maintenance is a continuous process of adding new rules. Okay. So that's why we used to have minor releases, major releases, those kind of things. So all the urgent requirements used to be taken care of in those monthly releases, and not so urgent in quarterly or annual releases. So in the GenAI method, the chatbot is deployed with monitoring systems. Customer asks a question the chatbot can't answer. The conversation is fed back to the system to improve it. So there is a feedback loop, right? So the system used to learn on its own. Okay. I mean, wherever it requires additional information, right? It can go and ask the developer or the product owner. So this is the kind of information that I require to answer this kind of a customer question. So it will be proactive in going back to the developer or the owner to give it more information so that you can answer that kind of a question. So that's how these intelligent systems are. So the maintenance process is more about fine-tuning the model or updating the data, right? So that's how simple and straightforward it's going to be. Okay, so in a nutshell, right? So what we are trying to say in traditional SDLC, right? Development phases are sequential and rigid because we used to go through the phases, mostly waterfall. With Agile, it improved, but within Agile also, we used to follow waterfall only most of the times. Most engineering effort concentrated in manual coding and testing. Yes. Handoff between specialists create bottlenecks. Yeah, we all experienced the code throwing, right? The developer used to develop something, then used to throw the code at tester. Tester used to test something, then he used to throw the code back to the developer. So it used to be a very frustrating exercise. So in GenAI world, the the blur is there between developer and tester. So he's only develop. He has to develop. He has to do that most of the testing. There is not a separate testing team as such in most of the cases. So only the business users or the governance guys, right? They will come in the last once you are satisfied with your all the testing uh, phases, right? So I don't, I'm not seeing any separate testers in GenAI projects as such. In traditional SDLC, documentation is created separately after development. So again, that used to take weeks, if not months. So and testing used to happen after the feature is completed and used to be tested by some other person who doesn't have a knowledge about development or code at all. Okay. That's the irony there. But in GenAI world, so everybody is focused on validation, optimization, strategic decisions. And documentation is generated and updated continuously alongside the code because it becomes part and parcel of the LLM responsibility to generate the code, right? You just give a simple prompt of asking you to generate the documentation whenever it generates the code, right? As simple as that. You get a beautiful document out of it. And continuously feed real world usage data so that it can understand and better itself, right? This is where we are calling a reinforcement learning. Okay, so let me, before I go to the next slide, right, let me ask you. So if I have to do this in traditional way, if I have to do GenAI way, right? So what is the speed in GenAI with GenAI SDLC? Anybody wants to take a guess?
Can you
Definitely,
please repeat the
definitely it is.
question, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, once again.
Yeah,
Yeah, someone is answering. Please go ahead.
hi Srini, this is Subbu. Uh, I heard that Elon Musk usually runs 1 day sprint, so I believe this is something like that. Yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, I mean, compared to traditional SDLC, the chatbot discussion that we had, right? So if it takes like X days, so with GenAI, right? How many days do you think it's going to take? That's my question actually. So
Definitely,
GenAI is going to be 3x
definitely,
faster, 2x
definitely, the
faster.
estimates
Mm.
would be in the days, not in the weeks or in the months. So only the thing where we are going to spend some time is fine tuning and trying to evaluate the models, evaluate the entire system. That's the only way we have to spend more time. Srini, if I'm not wrong.
Okay, okay. So as of things currently stands, right? So I mean, we are giving the estimations on various projects, right? So this is at least what we think. So the traditional SDFs, right? The chatbot is going to take 27 weeks. So GenAI world, we are saying that it's going to take anywhere between 6 to 10 weeks. Okay. Again, see, the development and everything is can be done maybe in 1 week or 2 weeks, but the lot of time it's going to take is on the testing uh, and the user testing and the AI governance processes and putting this in deployment and monitoring it. Okay, that's definitely is taking around 5 to 6 weeks. Okay. But this is kind of a 3x improvements as such. Okay. The flexibility, as you can show, is going to be very high compared to traditional SDLC. Manual effort is moderate. AI involvement across all phases. The risk type that we generally notice is, yeah, hallucination, bias, and drift. So if the application is going to be internal, you can still manage. But if the application is going to be external, if you're going to expose these things to the outside world, right? The bias is going to become very, very important, especially if you are trying to analyze and understand the resumes of a outside world, right? If you're trying to recruit a person using your AI tools, then you have to make sure this bias and hallucination doesn't come into the picture at all. So you have almost 95% accuracy. You have to demonstrate to the regulators. But if your internal application, you are trying to use chatbot, right? So, or even there's external application where you are trying to say, where is my order and all that stuff, right? That may not require that kind of a scrutiny as such, because it's a simple application where you're trying to say, where is my order? Even if it says something, right? Yeah, you'll feel bad, but it's not really going to impact. But the hiring decision, right? It's going to personal impact. If the GenAI is going to make some mistake, right? Then you are heavily impacted. You might be losing one good opportunity because of the mistakes from GenAI side, right? So that is the reason this bias and all those things becomes very, very important in those kind of applications. Okay, so any any comments or anything like that here on traditional versus GenAI SDLC, especially on the timelines perspective?
Is this for a end-to-end product delivery which is measured, or this is a forecast?
No, this is end-to-end delivery, including putting in the production.
No, okay, great. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have one more question on the, not on this, but on the earlier product which you have developed, you told, right? On related to the lighting and all, right? So in that, is there a provision of adding the lux level, which usually will be measured by, the people who will be using this application, sort of a thing?
Yeah, I think that measurement is also there in the right hand side to the bottom actually.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you might have missed it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm not from the lighting industry. I don't know what is lux and all that stuff. Okay,
Okay, that is
so these
luminous
are all the things that
intensity.
are given by user, the end
Okay.
user customer. But you are just able to understand those terms quickly and develop the prototype within a day.
Yeah, yeah, understood. Great.
Yeah.
1 day is great. Okay, thanks.
Not even one day, 3 hours, 1 hour for each prototype we took. Of course, for understanding, we took and brainstormed maybe a couple of hours how to do that because there are two approaches here in the development, right? You give the image to model like stable diffusion or something like that, right? And using that
Mm,
picture of a room, whether it can identify and suggest what kind of lighting that room requires. That
requires.
is one
Okay.
approach. But other approach is you ask the model in a plain text how the room should look like and render that information using the front end tools. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
you ask
Okay.
the LLM model to give a JSON output, right?
Mm.
Then
Okay.
use the JSON output to render in the using the front end tools. So
Oh,
we
okay.
tried both approaches. So both had pros and cons and all that stuff. But even within those 1 day, we tried multiple options from the solutioning side itself.
Yeah, great to hear. Thank you. Thanks.
So moving on, right? So how traditional to AI native projects, how the roles and team structures are changing and the responsibilities are changing, right? So this is one of the questions that is being asked by a lot of folks who are in the mentorship or group, the mentorship group, right? So we thought we'll cover this as well as part of this session. Okay. So transitioning to GenAI augmented transitioning to GenAI augmented development, right? So first the mindset shift that needs to happen for each one of us. Okay. So the old mindset used to be I write every line of code myself. Okay. But you have to think now, I will orchestrate AI to generate, test, and optimize code. By the way, you can use models to even do the testing, complete end-to-end testing by the LLM itself. Okay. But you have to make sure that it is testing properly or not. So one more testing you have to do yourself. But most of the testing also you can automate using LLM. And the old mindset used to be spec must be perfect before starting. I mean, that was required in those days because if you have to change in the middle, right, it used to be very, very expensive. In the new mindset, start with AI generated prototypes and iterate. So just I demonstrated using the lighting simulation, right? So that's a path forward. Documentation is a code, okay, that we always used to think. And in the new world, documentation is AI assisted and continuous. As you develop the code, the documentation is automatically generated. Testing is a separate final step, but in our world, testing is continuous and AI driven. And architecture is static. I mean, that was required because the architecture tools and technologies we used to standardize at a framework level, right? For all data warehousing projects needs to follow this architecture. All Java related projects needs to follow this architecture, right? We used to define like that. But now architecture evolves dynamically with AI recommendations. Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised some other recommendations that AI makes, right? I thought I will do my application this way. Once I started developing, then used to throw some other ideas, so which is really surprising, and at least I personally never thought of those kind of that kind of a thought process, and it really surprises in that sense. Okay, then AI augmented development skills, right? So prompt engineering, which we discussed uh, multiple times, and code review for AI generated code. I think this is becoming one of the key important trait, right? I mean, if you have to do this code review, you have to be really thorough yourself as to how you need to develop a code, either in Java or Python or .NET, right? Because I personally notice myself, it still makes a lot of mistakes. You feel that it generated beautiful code, but once you start executing, right, you will went into unnecessary loops, and after correcting a lot of code, right? Because the LLM can generate whatever the previous instruction you gave to such an extent, right? If you are given an instruction, maybe if you are today at the 20th instruction and you given certain important information at the first instruction or second instruction, right? It forgets those first instruction and instruction. Again, at the 20th instruction, it makes the same mistake that it made in the first instruction. So that is a problem that I noticed. Okay. But at least Claude is a little bit intelligent enough. In between it will summarizes what happened in the previous 20 steps, right? So that way it can remember through that summarization. That's what Claude generally does. Otherwise, you will go into that endless loop uh, with these tools. So code review is very important. Data preparation for AI model. So this is one of the important things. What is the data that we are going to give, right? So for the AI simulation that we demonstrated, right? Now the customer has to give a data set that really should be qualitative. Then only this is going to work. So for the AI models to work, right? So the data set, curation of the data set is going to be very important. And again, at least the business users, the data analysts would spend a lot of time in preparing the data for these AI models. So this is very important. So the mindset check, right? The new engineering role from coder to solution orchestrator. So this is how everyone mindset should shift. So you have to give a prompt to yourself. Okay, this is yourself prompting yourself. I'm a solution orchestrator. AI is my power tool. I decide where, when, and how to use it. But you have to use it. Okay. So this is a prompt for you itself. So in this evolving your role, your value shifts from writing lines of code to making strategic decision about AI application. Okay. Because there's a number of options how you develop an application, right? So you really need to think through along with your LLM model. So it's going to be your buddy in conversation, right? There's no need to even look for an expert whom you need to debate. You can debate with multiple models and you'll definitely get a lot of insights and thoughts and its own point of view. So you need to take into those consideration, but you are the one who are going to make the final decision, right? So the decision making is going to be very, very important. So that's where your skill set needs to come into picture, and that's where you need to really improve. Tool selection. What is the tool that you are going to select for a given problem is very important. So that kind of expertise one should develop. Output verification. Apart from the code validation, right? The output verification, you should be able to understand quickly where it's going wrong, why it is going wrong, and all that stuff. Of course, the architectural design, that is going to be bread and butter. The foundation needs to be strong because if you are trying to build multiple applications or multiple features on top of that application, right, then architecture design is going to be key. So this is what we think everybody should inculcate as they move along with their GenAI applications. I think for the people who are starting fresh, especially for freshers, I think they will be the born native developers or orchestrators, but the people who have started, right, maybe 10 years or so, so that mind shift needs to happen pretty quickly. So these are the roles in traditional software project, right? So that's what we used to see. But in generative AI project, right? So AI product manager, right? So he is going to make a very, very play very, very important role. Okay. So he has to define the success metrics in terms of the AI models. Uh, Business outcomes is one of them, but the AI model success factors also he needs to define. That means hallucination percentage, right? Bias and fairness. Those kind of percentages then is a responsibility of AI product manager to come up with. Okay. So prompt engineering is a new role. So this kind of a requirement gathering and a scripting role. Scripting in the sense developer role. Okay, ML Gen AI engineer. So these roles will blur. So the person ML Gen AI engineer can be prompt engineer as well. Okay. So the data scientist or the data analyst that we discussed, right? So his primary role is to generate that kind of a data that is required for the Gen AI application. ML ops engineer or AI ops engineer, right? So that we discussed. So what kind of metric that he needs to monitor using those production grade applications. Then AI ethics and safety specialist. So this is one of the prominent roles that is going to come into the picture because if any application that is external facing has a bias, right, then the organization is going to face heavy fines. Recently, the EU AI Act has come into force. So anybody deviates from the EU AI Act, right? So they are going to pay 7% of their annual revenue as a fine to the regulators. So 7% is very huge. So that is the reason there are a lot of roles that are going to be created for AI ethics and safety and governance kind of a roles. So all the people who has gone through those played architect roles and all those product manager roles or delivery manager roles, right? So I think those guys needs to transition into this AI ethics and safety kind of a specialist roles. So that way they will have the the future, especially those who are playing a pure play kind of a project manager or delivery manager roles without having either domain expertise in the business terms or the technical expertise. So those roles were there for a reason earlier, but those roles are going to quickly diminish in the months to come. So this is the difference, right, between what is a traditional project manager and GenAI project manager. So his focus used to be on the scope, schedule, and budget, but now his focus should be model performance, user feedback loop, etc. I mean, the scope, schedule, budget is important, but those becomes kind of a secondary. Focus shifts. The the key skills, project planning, and resource allocation, traditional, but now AI literacy, risk management, bias, hallucination. Those things he needs to focus on because That is the output that you are going to give to the business users, right? So you need to really monitor those things. If the outputs for project plan and Gantt chart, now product roadmap and evaluation metrics would be the key. Traditional software engineering, we discussed already most of things. Traditional QA testers, this is also we discussed a lot, but this is at a high level view, right? How the roles are evolving or the duties are evolving, right? So if you just once again highlighting these points, right? If you just look at as a coder, right, how it needs to transition to orchestrator, okay? Orchestrating AI component and prompt engineering, system assembly, okay, assembling all the components and embracing that non-deterministic system mindset. Then this is a traditional product manager. I see a lot of guys who are joining these calls are coming from the product management backgrounds. I thought I will put this also together. So he has a lot more responsibilities, especially from the mindset shift, right? So core product skills. So apart from the traditional product manager skills, so he has to understand the model behavior, output quality, hallucination thresholds. He has to define all those things in his requirement document. He has to understand that from the technical standpoint, LLM concepts, prompt engineering, etc. He has to be data literate, right? Data sourcing, pre-processing, synthetic data generation if required for data testing, right? Then how the testing QA, what kind of model evaluation metrics he needs to track. And governance and risk management. So he really needs to understand if he's developing an application for EU, then he has to understand EU AI Act. And from the data privacy perspective, he needs to understand GDPR. All those things are going to play a very important role. Then from operational standpoint, he needs to understand ML ops, model deployment and rollback strategies, right? Monitoring model drift and performance degradation. Okay. So there's a talk in the industry that the product manager and project manager used to be separate roles. Now that is going to be merged into one role called product manager. He will do both the roles. Okay, so that's a talk, but we are to see. Okay, so that's all.